Hello, welcome to eLearning Unlocked. This is really a podcast for professionals working in e-learning teams, instructional designers, people in learning and development teams or HR teams, just to talk about trends and good to know facts in the e-learning world.
We're going to dive deep into best practices and tips that you can use in your daily e-learning.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Mariel.
Hi, I'm Julia.
And today we're going to talk about a fun topic. Today we're going to be myth busting again.
Yeah, it's actually part 3 of our myth busting series of episodes. So we're going to also explore another dose of myths. So let's dive in.
Yeah, we're going to explore the real impact of modern learning through some of these myths. So let's dive into 4 new myths and explain why they don't hold up anymore. So, might be some controversial topics coming, but that's why we make this podcast. So let's dive in. So the first myth for today is e-learning doesn't work for frontline or retail staff. Yeah, so a common belief is that e-learning doesn't really suit like maybe moving teams or on-the-go teams, typically teams like frontline staff. So these are actually teams that are very often, as opposed to corporate teams, still being taught in-person training, and they're still very much connected with on, let's say, an analog way and not a digital way. Whereas, for example, corporate training is already much, much more digitalized. Let's dive in.
Yeah. So first, let's say fact from our side that could support this one being a myth actually, is that mobile learning is actually getting much more attention nowadays, and it could really work well for the retail staff or frontline staff.
Yeah, so that's something really interesting, of course, because I think also, again, learning has changed and also our relationships with mobile phones have changed. And I think historically, let's say 10 years ago, retail staff was probably a lot less digitally connected because they weren't on their computers as much and phones weren't what they are today. But today, phones are like a mini computer.
Yeah.
They can do everything that our computer can do, basically. They're also the price of a computer. They're expensive nowadays, but they do a lot.
You can do a lot. With those. Yeah.
And so what that means is that because everyone has, let's say, a mini computer in their pocket as well, in store and in any kind of like frontline working position, you really do have access in these environments now as well to short lessons, updates, and micro-learning can be delivered to those ecosystems now, let's say. So that's quite perfect for, let's say, breaks, pre-shift refreshers, or downtime.
Yeah, I think it's a really great addition to the daily, let's say, work, right? Because you're really focused on, let's say, working on the front line, but in the meantime, you can really dive deep into learning more about your products, your let's say, ways of working with sales, etc. So it's actually getting this kind of like work experience to another level, right?
Yeah.
Because as you mentioned previously, it was actually the case that those frontline or retail staff workers were really, just having this kind of like non-digital training, and it wasn't always ideal for them, right? Because you're really exhausted with like all the work you do daily, and then you need to be held up on like 8-hour workshops, right? And try to learn something out of it. So this kind of approach with short lessons, micro learning here and there works actually much better for retail staff.
Yeah, I think it goes to something that we said recently in a workshop with one of our clients. It's like an international brand, and a lot of stores also have like multi-brand approach. And so they were saying, we just want to stay top of mind. And the best way to stay top of mind is, okay, of course you can come in once a year, make a big splash, have an in-person training. But if you really want to stay top of mind, you need to connect with them like once a week, once a month, whatever kind of pace you think makes sense for the work environment. But if you really, as a brand, want to stay relevant to those frontline workers, you really need to find a way to connect with them. And, sending someone to the store on a weekly basis is probably not going to be the most logical way, right?
Yeah, so I think we have another myth busted actually, because we ticked some boxes that are actually truth in terms of, let's say, what you can do with e-learning currently in terms of frontline or retail staff. So yeah, another one on our list.
Thank you, Julia. Let's go on to the next one. So the next myth that we have for today, do you want to introduce it?
Yeah, so that e-learning can't actually build companies' culture.
Yes, I think this is also an interesting misconception, because I think, again, due to the way that perhaps e-learning used to be, I mean, again, 10 years ago, it was maybe very cold or impersonal. And so I think when you talk about cultural alignment with the company, maybe that is not the first thing you think of as, e-learning. But e-learning can reinforce culture, right?
Yeah, especially if you really introduce this level of personalization, because you can really introduce your brand tone, your brand values. And when they open e-learning, I mean, your employees, when they open the e-learning, they can immediately see the brand. I think they can really connect with the brand. Also, e-learning introduced this kind of like social learning element, right? So it's not only, let's say, making the bond stronger with the brand itself, but also between the employees, right?
Yeah.
So they may not even work in the same region or even is in the same country, but they could imagine collaborating and really exchanging their thoughts on different products, on different, let's say, sales techniques. So I believe it takes it actually to another level in terms of company building rather than the other way around. So that's definitely a myth for me, at least.
No, it makes sense, because I think e-learning can really help scale cultural consistency across teams. It can also create a shared experience, reinforce certain values at every stage. And I think it also is a way for say a top-down connection as well. You can have a few messages from the CEO that each employee or each retail employee is going to see. So I think that's very valuable as well. Other than that, definitely, as you said, the visual impact, the branding impact. So as long as it's curated in a good way, and I think you can also make it more warm, less cold, have a more personalized tone, there's a lot you can do. So I agree.
Yeah, definitely.
Another myth busted.
Another one.
So we can go on to the next one then. So the next myth coming up is learners don't take e-learning seriously. How do you feel about that?
So maybe about the myth itself, just to dive a bit deeper in it, it may, seem at first that online training is optional, less important, not that, let's say, effective at the same time. But for me, it's definitely a myth. So if you were to ask me how I feel about it, I feel totally, let's say, the other way around, right? Because at the same time, when you can think of online training as being, let's say, not a very prominent part of your, let's say, daily work and your routine, I would say I would take it seriously, if I were this, employee.
And I think it can be true, right? I mean, I don't think that this myth has there's always a truth in every myth. And I think it can be true. It all depends on the quality, the structure of the learning, the way the deadlines are handled, or the interactivity, the assessments, and the relevance. If I think the e-learning is not taken seriously from a company strategy point of view, obviously that's going to translate probably into what the the students or the learners receive. And so yes, of course, if we don't take it seriously, then they're not going to take it seriously.
Yeah, right.
I think that's fair. Having said that, right, as soon as the training is practical, meaningful, I mean, then the learners can engage very deeply, right?
Exactly. And I think it's really important what you mentioned, because I haven't even looked at it from that perspective, but you need to really look broader, right? So if you have your company really focusing on making e-learning fun and really a crucial, let's say, part of your daily work, then it's actually
resonate.
Yeah, right? Exactly. It comes automatically to you, that you just take it as let's say, your daily routine.
No, 100%. So I think it's really interesting. I think, really there needs to be clear outcomes of the learning. There needs to be feedback, accountability. And of course, you can always have little incentives as well for people to get excited. Whether it's coupons or discounts or different kind of reward systems. I mean, everybody loves a good reward, right? So
So this one is we can say it's globally a myth, but indeed, you need to really,
there's some truth.
Let's say, check the core,
Yes.
Because if the core is not working, then indeed it may be true, but we strongly encourage, let's say, for it not to be true.
Yes, exactly. And it's just always, if you want to know, you just look at the course that you're presenting from sort of the learner's perspective, and you're like, how would I feel taking this course, right? And 90% of the time, you can already kind of feel like, would I take this seriously if I was in their shoes? And that's a great test. And of course, chat with the people that are actually part of the audience and see how they're receiving the material as well.
Yeah. Exactly. So this one was actually a bit controversial in a way, because you can really analyze it and check different perspectives. But all in all, if you make it engaging and really, let's say, learners focused,
learner-centric,
then it should work. So
absolutely. Well,
let's say it's busted.
Still busted. Yes. Okay, then we can move to the next one.
So the last myth that we have is pretty strong. So that e-learning can actually replace face-to-face training. So Mariel, what's your approach towards this one?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess some people then think, they want to be radical the other way around. It's okay, well, e-learning can replace every in-person training event. And honestly, while e-learning is so powerful, it does have to be like a complement.
Yeah, right? As long as, let's say it works together, right? Because it's really good to find a nice balance between the two and really use the power of both face-to-face training and e-learning, right?
No, absolutely.
Because if you go only for one, then you don't really use all the potential that you have there. So I think this is the core, let's say, focus here. So indeed, it should be treated as a complement.
No, 100%. I mean, it's like, there's really areas like leadership, coaching, or, even hands-on skills that really also benefit from live practice. And I think we also saw that with one of our retail clients. They said, when we go for a training event, the 2 months following that, our sales are up by 40%, which I thought was just absolutely wild. But I do think there is a power in showing up and having that connection. But, since you cannot show up every 2 months, then there's also this power in having a little notification every week, a little quiz, a little video, a little reminder to kind of balance it out, right?
Yeah, and I think the fact that you brought up the kind of topics that you can, let's say, deliver a bit better with e-learning or with face-to-face training, this is also something that you need to understand when you prepare, let's say, learning in general in your company, right? Yeah. Because indeed, like, as you mentioned, leadership, like even some sales skills, so really the soft skills in general, they may be a bit, let's say, they may work a bit better in the real life environment. But at the same time, you can drop, some like theory here and there and then use it during the live training. So like blended learning is a very nice concept as well that we can dive deep in the next episodes. Yeah. But I think utilizing the two could work well.
Absolutely. I think like blended learning is really important. So the best results come from online plus face-to-face. And of course, using the right format for the right goal. So certain things are going to translate better online and some things are going to just translate better in person. And it's just about striking that right balance between the two.
Yeah, definitely. So for sure, we're in favor of face-to-face training. It's just, let's say, finding this right balance between the two.
Yeah, so another myth busted for sure.
So that was the last one for today. Another episode of myth busting is now, let's say, over.
Yes.
So I hope you really enjoyed it, and you can really see how many myths there are, right? It's like
definitely. Yeah, we hope it kind of like helps just challenge maybe some more data thinking or some things that we might have in mind or not. Even if you were thinking about these topics, I think it's always fun to kind of like challenge ideas and think about what really makes sense in terms of the balance and the approach. And yeah, we'll see you next time with more insights, trends, and practical tips for e-learning.
Yeah. Thanks for listening and see you next time.
Thank you so much.